As we continue to talk about the wake of the mass shooting at Michigan State University on Monday, we've taken this perspective from so many different angles, from students that were on site and parents that were calling in to their kids the night of the shooting and afterward, and the recovery, particularly in the direct MSU community. But this is a mass shooting that has happened here in the state of Michigan. It affects so many people indirectly as well. And here to talk to us about how we can help those communities heal as well in the wake of this tragedy is Carrie Krawiec from the Birmingham Maple Clinic. Carrie, thanks for being with us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, glad to have you with us for this because while some may not be directly associated with Michigan State, they may not be a student, they may not be a staff member, faculty, or have any really affiliation with Michigan State. Seeing this in the news once again in the state of Michigan, just a little under 15 months following the shooting at Oxford High School, can have a big effect on people of all different walks of life and all different affiliations to different places here in Michigan. So where should we begin with helping these individuals heal? Because they're going to have a different way of seeing this event and maybe being traumatized in their own way by this event, and they also need our support.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I was in high school when the first national publicized mass shooting happened at a school place. My son's in third grade, and now he's already had one every single school year of his little life. So, for our younger kids, they are experiencing these pretty routine, even if they don't know about them or hear about them. They are doing active shooter trainings, and they may hear touches of news stories or things that other people are talking about. So it is important to consider how they are affected by this information.
And it affects people at different ages, at different parts of their life in a different way. For those that may have been on a really short level of indirectly affected by this, so you think about the parents, you think about people that have relatives close or distant at Michigan State. This is something where it can make them a little bit nervous too, even at their own university too. If their kids aren't at MSU and they're at Michigan, they're at Northern Michigan, they're at Western, whatever they're at, this could also make them a little bit nervous. How should we approach these individuals too? Because there's always going to be a sense of fear, unfortunately, in today's day and age when you're sending your kids to school, whether it is elementary, middle, high school, or college. So where should we start with these individuals to help them through the emotions that they're feeling in the wake of Monday's event at Michigan State, but also with these real fears that are there and that are present and are based in reality for our world today?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, like you said, is really normalizing the fear that and really accepting it and being compassionate towards it, that anxiety when something scary happens is precisely how we are supposed to respond. So nobody right now in this moment is out of line if they are feeling anxious, especially since something has just happened. This is part of our fight or flight response, and it's actually a good thing. It is actually this fear that helps us to plan and prepare for the future. So in ways, fear is good. What we don't want is panic. Panic does not help us. But a little bit of fear can help us to make better choices. Like I said, to plan and be aware of our surroundings, and to use that moving forward to help create safety for ourselves. So depending on, every age and stage, you're going to approach this differently. So for very young kids, you may not talk about it at all, especially if they don't know yet anything about it and aren't going to learn about it from anyone else. So like first grade and under, they really don't need to talk about it. They wouldn't really understand, and it would really just expose them to unnecessary information. For kids that are old enough to have heard something or maybe hear something from other students, it's important to start asking about what they've heard and let them really guide the conversation. Ask them if they have questions for you, and only fill in additional information if there is something very incorrect, that fill in the misinformation in an age appropriate way. Of course, you're going to want to be considering your kids' age, their own maturity, and how they've handled difficult or stressful conversations before. As you get a little bit older, of course, reminding kids of their own safety plans and having them remind you, what do they know about keeping themselves safe? What do they know to look for? What do they need to do or know to do in the event of an issue? I think, like you touched on, I think one interesting sort of place is happening at colleges is that parents and their adult children may be on different pages about whether to return to school or not. And those families will have really unique conversations about whom gets to decide. Does the adult child get to decide what's best for them, or does their parent get to decide what's best for them? And how will they come to some shared agreement about what choices are made moving forward, whether it's returning to school or not?
We're joined by Carrie Krawiec today from the Birmingham Maple Clinic on our program. You can find more information on their website at birminghammaple.com. That's birminghammaple.com for more information and to get in contact with the professionals at the Birmingham Maple Clinic should you be in need of some consultation and some help at this time. And Carrie, continuing on that topic of talking about this with younger children, with younger people also, in some of these cases, they may be the siblings, they may be close family of individuals that were at Michigan State and may even be back home right now or have come back home. And so now for these parents, there's kind of two different angles to approach this at, because for one, you have your kid who's come back from Michigan State and is feeling the real feelings of shell shock and trauma and post-traumatic stress, maybe even from Monday night's events, and then their siblings who typically when their brother, their sister, their other siblings come home, that's a happy occasion. They're reuniting with them. But in this case, their sibling is grieving, and they may not fully understand just what that is or how that's affecting them. So how should parents approach that, especially with their younger kids, so that you don't create any sort of scenario where that innocent interaction could have a really negative outcome for the student that's come home?
Absolutely. And like, right. And any other normal sibling conflicts that might come up,
Yeah.
you're going to want to be a little more tender and compassionate. You can't always guarantee younger siblings are going to be able to know sort of the severity or gravity of this. I think a couple things are really important. Again, first, most of us have already had our reactions to this, but I think if there is sort of like an upset feeling reaction as parents, to first have that by ourselves or with each other and keep that away from our kids. Certainly, kind of predict problems or predict kind of ideas, like you may be excited to see your older sibling, but they perhaps may need time or space. They may need quietness, or they may be feeling a little bit different or shut down, and kind of like what is our expectation as parents, or what is your idea as younger brother or sister to take care of your sibling who may be not having the best time right now. I think as parents, just monitoring all of your kids, making sure you're getting, healthy eating, healthy sleeping, kind of keeping some semblance of a routine, even if you have a student that's returned home, trying to, kind of have a good day to night routine, get some time outdoors, get some time for physical activity, and maybe creating sort of a shared family expectation for some of those things. Also, just, predicting other certain issues that might come up, like if there is a conflict, perhaps directing your younger child, bring it to me and I'll talk about it or process it with the older sibling, and instead of having it go necessarily through them. And I think also monitoring social media and news consumption, that during these times where things are so confusing and we're so desperate to understand the ununderstandable, that we look to information to soothe us. But obviously too much of it could become obsessive. It could become distressing and traumatic in and of itself. So predicting those kinds of things for your family, certainly also creating, your child, especially the one that was perhaps there or connected in some way, might certainly want and need to talk about it, which is good. But you may also as a family choose that you'll need sometimes to not talk about it, right? Like, and what will we be doing, if it's playing games or reading or kind of lighter activities, so that we're not totally always immersed in this and it has some boundaries.
We're joined on the show today by Carrie Krawiec, a therapist at the Birmingham Maple Clinic. Again, you can find more information and get in contact with them on their website, birminghammaple.com. The phone number, 248-646-6659 for more information, 248-646-6659. to talk about this and other topics that you may need to discuss with a professional at the Birmingham Maple Clinic. Carrie, for some of these families, just to continue on with that particular unit in particular, if they are returning their kids back to Michigan State this weekend, we talked about having that conversation about whether or not to go back, whose decision that may be, whether it's the adult child or it is the parent. If they are going back to Michigan State this weekend, knowing that as of now, classes are scheduled to resume next week, and a lot of these students will be returning, that are going to be returning, will be returning over the weekend back to campus, some for the first time since Monday's incident. And with that being the case, how should that be approached too by these parents? Because even though in some cases these kids may be eager to get back to some semblance of normalcy in their daily life as they're trying to recover from what they experienced on Monday, going back into that environment can't possibly be easy for a lot of these students.
No, absolutely. It would not. And you're right. In many ways, returning to your routine is one of the best things for you. And that, and being able to sort of expose yourself to the new reality, which is in most cases, most places are safe routinely, right? It's these things that happen once in a while that are very scary and very traumatic for us. But following something like this, the campus is probably more safe than it has ever been historically. And to remind your children and yourself of that. I mean, certainly you're going to also, again, like I said before, knowing your own child's, personality, their own history, the other traumas they've incurred in their lifetime, and how have they handled them, any kind of behaviors of substance use or abuse, like the opportunity to have some poor coping, especially after a trauma, especially on a college campus, is there. And to be kind of thinking about your particular child, what kind of checks and balances will they need? Will you be able to observe or supervise to make sure they're coping in healthy ways, maintaining their routine, attending classes, eating and sleeping in healthy ways? You won't get to supervise them 24/7, but you might want to have some conversations with them. Kind of what you know about them and their history is going to set them up for success moving forward.
Again, birminghammaple.com for more information, get in contact with the professionals at the Birmingham Maple Clinic, and then continuing on, once they are back on campus and they have been there and they're going through their new routine, whatever that new routine looks like, whatever this new sort of normal that is going to be at Michigan State for these students, what should be the approach from the parental side of things to check in with these kids over time? Because on the one hand, they're going to want that independence back and get back into that routine, but it's important too to keep a watchful eye on them and make sure that they are recovering at a rate that is optimal and that is hopefully helping them through whatever they're experiencing, given what they experienced on Monday.
I think, like obviously different kids are going to have different likelihoods of reaching out to their parents and talking to them. And you as parents are going to have to gauge sort of what you know about your own kid. I mean, I would really normalize for your kids, especially the ones really eager to go back. You're going to want to be excited, positive, supportive, but maybe also offer this sort of caution that, like, even though you feel very excited right now, some things may feel so different, or you may encounter feelings or people or other people's reactions that you haven't expected yet. And when you do, I'm here for you to talk to you about those, to help you. If it turns out your feelings change and right now you're a 10 in terms of excitement and readiness, and at some point along the way you drop, that's okay, that we understand that and that we predict that as parents, that right, that these excited or this desire to return might be heightened now, but it could change and ebb and flow over time, and that we'll be with you and support you and problem solve as we need to as you go through those ebbs and flows. I think it would be normal after anything like this, that the whole collective community is going to have experiences that are going to feel positive and coming together. And then there's going to be times where things feel very dark and disappointing, and that just kind of to be prepared for those waves. You may not know when they come, walk past a certain place, or, smell a certain smell, or, see a police squad car, something might evoke those feelings again, and just to be prepared for them and that they're acceptable and okay.
Joined by Carrie Krawiec on today's edition of the Megacast, a therapist at the Birmingham Maple Clinic. Again, their website, birminghammmaple.com. Their phone number, 248-646-6659, 248-646-6659. And for those parents, too, as they return their kids to campus in East Lansing, and once again, their kids are back on their own, and the fear of the unknown is always going to be there when you're not around your kids. It's natural for a parent to be worried about their children when they're not immediately there with them and when they are. So for parents, what should they be doing, too, to protect their own mental health and bring themselves through their process of recovery from this scenario after they've dropped their kids back off in East Lansing, should that be how this goes?
Sure, certainly connecting with other parents and talking with them could be a beneficial thing, or talking with a therapist. Like we said initially, I mean, fear is going to be high in the beginning, and it's through time and repetition that we sort of start to ease back into some normalcy. So, I mean, especially after something like this, we expect people to stay very anxious or grieving or sad or angry, any kind of intense emotion we would expect to see. If it persists in intensity and 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, with no new information or nothing new scary, then those would certainly be a concern. That, like, after a significant amount of time with, like I said, no new traumatic information, we would expect those feelings to dissipate. So if they're not dissipating, you will need to check in with a doctor or therapist, somebody to help you relieve those. Again, like I said, in most cases, most places of education are safe most of the time. After something like this, security and attention is going to be heightened that much more. So perhaps reminding yourself this is the safest time for your child, and to allow yourself to be comforted by that. To also, again, know what you know about your child. What skills and abilities and resources does your child have, and what have they shown you in the past in their times of need, and allow that information to really soothe you, and remind you of your own confidence in your child. And it'll be that confidence that also helps your child too.
Carrie, a few more minutes with you before we'll need to move on today. Before we wrap things up, for others that are affected by this, alumni, other parents, extended family, those that aren't even affiliated in any way with Michigan State, but are feeling for those that experienced this on Monday night at MSU, as they continue to recover from this as well, how should we approach having those conversations and those check-ins with people that we know are in some way affected by this, and especially because over time, those emotions are going to be felt in a different way and are going to affect a lot of people in a different way as well.
Sure. I think one thing, I mean, it never hurts to reach out, and to at least try. Now, you may not get an instant response, and that's okay too. I think something like this is, of course, initially, perhaps especially people very closely involved are flooded with attention and care, but it's in those weeks and months later where, the topic's gotten quieted, or maybe they feel like I should be over this, so I shouldn't still be talking about it. And it's really those people at those times, like I said, a random day this summer where maybe just being able to ask someone how they're doing would be so meaningful, because perhaps at those times they don't feel the same permission that they have right now in the present, and they may still have that need. So just keeping those people on your minds, and offering whenever you can. Is there something you need from me? Is there something I could do for you? Do you want to talk? Do you want to not talk about this and talk about anything else? Allowing those people that are closely affected to guide the conversation, and just offering the invitation of your presence and support, and even physical closeness and proximity are very stress relieving to people.
BirminghamMaple.com, or you can call them 248-646-6659 for more information and consultation. Carrie, thank you as always for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.